Hello and welcome to House Reed, my Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire theorising page, where I talk about A Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones from the perspective of a writer and try to use the common techniques used in writing to make predictions and gain a deeper understanding of what may happen in the future and what is happening now in the show and the books. Recently, a theory popped up on my news feed which involves the Reed family. Obviously, it's my favourite house, I couldn't ignore this and had to look into it somewhat and thought that I should do a video on it subsequently. This theory can be symbolised by the initials R+L = J+M. So to explain this theory, which is essentially a sort of tag-on theory to the widely known, widely believed R+L = J theory, I'll first use a clip from Alt-X where he will describe exactly what the R+L = J theory is.
The idea is that Jon Snow is not the bastard son of Eddard Stark and an unknown woman, as Jon and most of Westeros believes, but is actually the son of Ned's sister, Lyanna Stark, and Rhaegar Targaryen. So, for a bit of context, Prince Rhaegar Targaryen was the son of the Mad King, Aerys Targaryen, who was overthrown in Robert Baratheon's rebellion, the war that made Robert king. Lyanna is kind of the Helen of Troy of Westeros, because Robert's rebellion started when Lyanna, who at the time was betrothed to Robert, was abducted by, or more likely ran away with, Prince Rhaegar, who was already married to Elia Martell. Rhaegar spent the start of the war in the Tower of Joy in Dorne with Lyanna, before going off to battle and to his doom in the form of Robert's hammer. So after the war was over, Ned and 6 others headed to the tower to find Lyanna, where they were confronted by 3 of the dead king's guard.
We know about the events in the Tower of Joy from a number of sources. One of the key ones, which has to do with Ned Stark's promise, is from a dream about the Tower of Joy that Ned Stark has. Here's a clip from the audiobook in which Ned Stark relives events from that period.
He dreamt an old dream of 3 knights in white cloaks and a tower long fallen, and Lyanna in a bed of blood. In the dream, his friends rode with him, as they had in life. Proud Martin Cassel, Jory's father, faithful Theowall, Ethan Glover, who had been Brandon's squire, Sir Mark Risewell, soft of speech and gentle of heart, the Crannog man, Howland Reed, Lord Dustin, on his great red stallion. Ned had known their faces as well as he knew his own once, but the years leech at a man's memories, even those he has vowed never to forget.
So Ned Stark and a bunch of his mates rock up to the Tower of Joy and start a battle with the people who are guarding it. Here's Alt-X to explain what happened next.
When the fight was over, the 2 survivors, Ned and his friend Howland Reed, went up the tower to find Lyanna Stark in a bed of blood. There, Lyanna got Ned to make her a promise before she died.
So, Howland Reed and Ned Stark enter the tower, and some kind of promise. Here's a relevant clip from the audio in which Ned Stark reveals he made some kind of promise.
As they came together in a rush of steel and shadow, he could hear Lyanna screaming, "Eddard!" she called. A storm of rose petals blew across a blood-streaked sky, as blue as the eyes of death. "Lord Eddard!" Lyanna called out again. "I promise," he whispered. "Leah, I promise."
So I'll take you back to Alt-X to explain what the leading theory on the content of what this promise was.
So, R+L = J suggests that Lyanna's bed of blood is one of childbirth, the baby is Rhaegar and Lyanna's, and that Ned's promise to Lyanna is to pretend that the child is his, in order to protect the child from Robert, who would see the son of the Targaryen prince as a threat and likely have him killed, just as he had Rhaegar's wife and other children killed. In any case, Ned then comes back from the war with a baby, Jon, who until his death he raises as his own son in Winterfell.
So let's assume for the moment that R+L = J is true. Of course, if Lyanna's dying wish was for Ned Stark to take a baby as his own, there is no way of telling whether Jon Snow was an only child or not. There is always, of course, no matter how slim, the possibility of twins. It would obviously follow that as Ned Stark only brought one child back with him, that would mean that another child would have to have been taken by someone else, and the only candidate to take a child at that point, the only living person in there, was Howland Reed. The M in R+L = J+M is Meera Reed, and the theory that has been bandied around the internet and popped up on my newsfeed is that Jon Snow and Meera Reed are twin brother and sister. This is based on the fact that Howland Reed was in the Tower of Joy at the time. Their apparently similar appearance, although I'll talk about that in a second, and the sort of unknowns that surround Meera's mother, Jaina Reed, and the apparent idea that they have the same birthday, or at least certainly the same year. So I think you could probably tell from the tone of my voice that I don't find this theory particularly compelling. Coming from a writer's standpoint, I don't really see the narrative use of Jon Snow being Meera Reed's brother, unless they were to change something about the system of royal inheritance. As a female can't inherit the throne, a female Targaryen twin sister for Jon would be narratively largely irrelevant. Another reason that I think that this idea probably isn't true is actually the appearance of Meera Reed and the appearance of Jon Snow aren't actually very similar. Here's a quote from the wiki of Ice and Fire explaining Meera's appearance.
As is typical of Cronogman, Meera is short and slim. She has long brown hair and green eyes. Although she is flat-chested and is never described as being particularly beautiful, Theon Greyjoy seems to consider her attractive, while Bran Stark's initial crush on her grows to the point of believing himself to love her by a dance with dragons.
And here's a quote from the wiki of Ice and Fire describing Jon's appearance.
Even at age 14, Jon is said to have more Stark-like features than any of his half-brothers. Jon has a lean build, with dark brown hair and grey eyes so dark they border on black. He is graceful and quick. Tyrion Lannister notes that Jon has the traditional Stark face in everything but name, long, solemn and guarded a face that gives nothing away. He remarks to himself that whoever Jon's mother was, she left little of herself in her son's appearance.
Well, as you could hear, they didn't really have that much in common. Significantly differently coloured eyes, for one, and I would argue that simply both of them having dark hair is not enough to suggest a common parentage. The other point about not knowing much about Meera's mother does not seem to hold water to me. I mean, just because we don't know much about her doesn't mean anything significant about that character. So I would say that, on the whole, this theory is probably kind of a non-starter. Interesting, I suppose, but I personally don't find it particularly convincing. It's far less convincing than the simple R+L = J. If I've missed anything out, feel free to point that out in the comments below. And if you have any reason to believe that Meera Reed is in fact Jon Snow's brother, or any theories that surround House Reed, I'd be definitely interested to hear about them. If you liked this video, please like it, and if you really liked it, why not subscribe for more?